Tonight, we've been asked over and over and over and over again to talk about rotary buffing, using a rotary polisher. But to be honest with you, we've been a little hesitant about doing that because these machines can be very, very dangerous, so we purposely stay away from showing them, with no disrespect to people like you, because there is a huge jump when you get into rotary. The liability, how quick you can mess something up, how quick you can burn through, how bad the swirl marks are, that quick before you know it. Heat, burn through. So first and foremost, by no means tonight is this going to be, this is how you use a rotary, and after you see this tonight, you're going to be able to do a rotary. Please don't think that way, because that's far from the truth. There's a lot of neat threads right now up on I know about people go get old hoods from body shops, they start practicing, burn through, go get another one. That's a great way to do it. We're here tonight to show you some of the tricks and techniques to kind of shrink, shorten, minimize some of those horrible mistakes that you might make, to kind of make that transition if you want. Just to begin with, that spin pattern of a rotary is significantly different than that of a DA. We all know that a DA oscillates and slowly rotates, and anytime you start putting pressure down or you get into there where it hits an edge, that rotational stops. That's kind of a safety factor, and it just kind of oscillates. That's one of the DA's best features. However, that's what holds that DA back from being able to remove serious defects, serious oxidation, sanding marks. So it's a good and bad. Same thing happens with this, good and bad. You got that single rotational action. If you don't want to spin it up, it's almost like a grinder. That's what's giving you that additional cutting power, or the ability to remove sanding marks, severe oxidation, severe swirls, severe stains. But at the same time, that is also what can damage that finish that quick. So respect, respect, respect. Okay? Just like that G100, variable speed, you have a trigger. Okay? Slow is better. Always use the least aggressive method. We preach that with products, with just about everything. If you're working on a finish, for example, and you didn't get the swirl out because you were too light on the aggressiveness, what is an option? What's your next step? You do a couple passes with the DA or with the rotary, you go, wow, that wasn't enough. What can I do?
Heavier pad.
Heavier pad? What if you just do it? More aggressive polish? What if you just do it a second time? Okay. However, what if you start out too aggressive and you're working and you stripe an edge and take the paint right off? What are your options then? So the philosophy is it's easier to go back and remove paint than it is to go back and add it later. Keep that in the back of your mind. Everybody always talks about speed, 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 and as you become more familiar with the rotary and you start doing vehicles, we're all unfortunately in a habit of time is money. Got to get the car done faster. Fast and this machine don't like each other. So fast equals burn throughs. Fast equals swirl marks. So you got to slow down, deliver better work, and that's what's going to get you ultimately more money if you're a detailer, or better satisfaction if it's just your own personal car. Just slow down just a little bit. Okay? Okay, least to most aggressive. Is that in the right order? Okay. These two become cutting, and these two become polishing ultimately. Now you add on top of that much of the mirror glaze products, and you can start adding, we all know number 82 swirl-free polish. We all know and are fond of 83 dual action cleaner polish. We're all very fond of number 80 speed glaze. Now we introduce two new ones. M84 compound power cleaner and M85 diamond cut. Okay? 3 polishes, 2 compounds. How many options do you have when you have 3 liquids and 2 pads? You start mixing and matching. What does that do for that cutting power? A lot of variables. W9000 finishing pad with M83, with M80, with M82 is going to yield 3 different results. If I go to a more aggressive pad with those same 3 products, 3 different results. It starts getting a little tricky because there's so many variables, and you've heard us talk about it. Different types of paints, different conditions, different depths of scratches, different depths of swirl marks. It's like a big mechanic's toolbox. There's multiple screwdrivers, multiple flatheads. If you're a true professional that does this every day and know what you're doing, you're going to begin to precisely know which combination is the right for what you're doing. But when you're learning, least aggressive method. Start working your way down. 2 cutting products, 2 cutting pads. How aggressive is a wool pad and M85 diamond cut going to be? Aggressive. Very aggressive. Very aggressive. Very aggressive. And many times needed. It's not a bad thing, but many times needed. This is a big hammer in your hands right here. Big hammer. Talk about respect. Okay, so we're going to be playing with a combination of all these. We're going to grab some of you guys, so we're going to put a bunch of swirl marks in this hood, and if a couple of you want to come up and start getting the hang of this, that's what you're here for tonight. Essentially, that is the same identical process. You are removing that top layer of material, whether it's clear coat or whether that is a color coat. It could be a single stage. You're taking off that top layer of paint, utilizing some form of abrasive, whether that's a hand sanding pad or whether that's even potentially a DA with sandpaper on it. Okay? You would think sanding is always going to be more aggressive than compounding, wouldn't it? You would think. But if done correctly, many times this is a much more concise, a much more precise way to remove heavy, heavy, heavy acid rain, orange peel, than just grinding away with a big, heavy compound. Okay? Very dangerous, but very precise when done correctly. We're gonna be showing you that tonight as well. We get those underneath sandpaper or a rotary.
Tracers or swirls?
Yep, very bad swirls.
I always want to work clean.
This is a great demo area we have here because that doesn't look like it's been worked on very much. Yeah, we should have some material to play with here. If we burn through, we burn through. Not the end of the world here, guys. We'd rather have you burn through here than on somebody's spot. Mike, you want to sand first or buff first? What do you want to just dive right into it? Let's just dive right into it. Okay? There's a lot of different kinds of papers on the market. There's a couple things you want to consider when you're working with paper. First and foremost is with the McGuire's finishing paper, you're always going to want to let it soak before you use it. This is actually a wet-only paper. There are some papers on the market that are wet or dry. This is a wet-only paper. It actually has a waterproof backing that needs to soak and get wet in order for that product to properly work. So on the back of the direction it says 15 minutes. Throw it in the night before, keep it in there. It lasts up to 4 or 6 weeks in water and it won't fall apart. That's what's nice about that waterproof aspect of it. We're going to grab some 2500 here.
Just to contrast, a lot of the wet papers in the market, they disintegrate if you leave them in the water.
In about 3 or 4 days.
Yeah, they'll disintegrate.
Yeah.
Put part on it.
So when we're talking about hand sanding to begin with, many people just take this paper, fold it over, and they just start sanding. But no matter how flat you think your hand is, when you start working with sanding, and you start working back and forth like this, you start generating uneven sanding pattern called finger marks. And you may not see it with your eyes when you're doing it, but if you're working on a show car that has been blocked and sanded smooth, you're going to see that. So these are backing pads. They're designed for that paper to wrap around. So when you're sanding perfectly smooth finish, and you're essentially blocking that top coat down and keeping it flat and keeping it smooth. Obviously, if you're working in a very contoured area around a headlight, a bumper, you're going to be able to take this off. There are some pads on the market that are a lot stiffer. There are also some pads on the market that are much more flexible. So you probably need to have a selection of these across the board, from super soft, maybe up to essentially really hard, again, if you want to block a big area like that. But this is our E7200. We're just going to wrap this around. We're going to grab our sanding lubricant. This is probably the most important feature. This paper is designed to leave, I don't want to get too in depth here, but to leave a very uniform sanding mark. The abrasives are very uniform. The positioning of them are very uniform, and we'll show you some shots later.